everybody, and welcome. I am told on good authority this is episode 7. How time flies. We'll soon be out of lockdown.
I hope so.
Okay, I'm going to leave the other partnership to last. And I'm going to talk to Gabriel only second because he's actually doing well. But he had an interesting week because his side got hammered. He's a Manchester United supporter, but he personally did very well. So I want to ask him how he managed to do that, because Barney Gurnard is with us. And Barney, it's amazing how I think the key I'm learning as you are is, even though you might be a Spurs supporter, you can't go for your own players. You actually have to be very disciplined, and you have to be extremely not subjective. What's the opposite to subjective?
Objective.
Thank you.
Before you even say that, Barney, welcome back after
pleasure.
A long break from us.
It's great to be back, and it's good to see that Neil's, I'm still got a drink on the left hand. I saw something earlier. What an incredible weekend we had in football. Never seen before things like that. 7-2 Aston Villa, Liverpool, Spurs beating United 6-1. Unprecedented scenes, making this 2020 even the more crazier year.
Yeah, indeed. So let's go to Gabriel, because he must have had, you and Keegan must have had mixed emotions, because I know you're both United supporters. So thankfully for you, I think you're in second place overall.
Yeah, no, Keegan and I are a little bit further down. We're at 55th place, but my personal team, I think, is doing relatively well at the moment. I must say I'm also quite lucky. Who would have guessed that captaining a Liverpool player this game week would result in 26 points, which was Salah, luckily, because he did score both goals in that shocking game. Having players like McCarthy as well is surprising, so this weekend of football in itself was awful, if I can say so. This is one of the silver linings that I got from it, having a good game week.
Well, the truth of the matter, it turns out that Mo Salah actually carried Liverpool the whole weekend. If you actually watched the game, you could see that he was the only one who was actually present at this game. Speaking of Mo Salah and Liverpool, Klopp Klopp, as a team, as a unit, reunited, how are you doing?
All good, thank you. And in fact, I've got an admission to make, because I had Mo Salah as captain the previous week, and I looked at the fixture list and thought maybe Jamie Vardy will fill his boots last weekend. So I changed them around, and the timing was just absolutely rotten. And I suppose, if you look at the results, it's one of those things where certainly very humbling for a lot of people, but it also just reminds us of, the vagaries involved in sport. You just never know what's going to happen next, unless of course you get involved in other nefarious activities.
But that's been quite interesting about watching the Premier League this season, while finally taking part in Fantasy League as well, because you do experience it at different levels. So as Liverpool fans, it was, you guys know, 2 weeks ago I've been out of action. I went down to Cape Town to visit the folks. I was a victim of crime soon after arriving and having all my worldly goods and 2 Liverpool tops stolen. And I didn't know that 2 weeks later I'd be happy to come home, get ready to watch Liverpool, and want to commit crime against my team who failed to show up or wake up at the back. So you go from watching it at that level as a fan, and then you're sitting on the couch with Liam, you're just like, fuck, we shouldn't have made those changes. We shouldn't. We're on YouTube. You can't swear.
Yeah, especially with that result. I'm surprised.
I was saying pig in Afrikaans. I was saying pig in Afrikaans. That's what I said.
Marcel, I want to ask you a question. The guy that stole your Liverpool shirts, are you sure he wasn't doing you a favor?
Hey, but you know what the crime is? What really hit me, when something like that happens, you realize as the days go on, what was in your suitcase?
Yeah.
And my saddest moment after that entire experience was when I sat down to watch Liverpool Arsenal, and then it hit me. My Liverpool tops were in there, and the tears just came, and not because they were stolen, but because they were New Balance tops, and the Nike tops are awful. And I'm like, what am I going to do now? That was the saddest moment out of that entire experience. But yes, I was saying to Gabriel before we started that I got a rule that I don't dance on other fans' graves on social media until the entire round is over, and especially if my team hasn't played yet. Thank God I stuck to that rule, because I mean, Harry Maguire was just there to be kicked in the shins on social media before I knew what Virgil van Dijk and Co were going to do, drinking a cup of tea while Villa had their day in the sunshine.
Well, interestingly enough, your individual team isn't doing too badly. You guys are the leader in our panel, at 17th on the table, but you got 47 points, which is not too bad.
Are they above Habits to Laugh now?
They are above Habits to Laugh.
Really?
Habits to Laugh is 26.
What happened to them?
They dropped.
Gee whiz, no wonder they're not on the show. Sky.
No, Sky's at a runner. He's hiding. He's doing what
Yeah, they're not
OG
available.
Yeah.
He's doing what OG and Barney did it for a couple of weeks. They just hid.
But the amazing thing is, and I want to bring in Barney here. Barney, if this is what the season's going to be like, I mean, wow. The other side that none of us, I don't think, have really had any players, and suddenly they've come from nowhere, is West Ham.
Yeah.
I mean, West Ham, look, for all the world, they'll be relegated by December, and they've pulled off a couple of big wins.
But didn't it start with David Moyes being sent upstairs?
Correct.
I think he got that works very well for them. But I was listening to Harry Redknapp the other night, and he was saying what a big club West Ham actually is. I mean, Harry would know, obviously. Got close ties to West Ham. And he was saying it's a massive club, West Ham. And he said what West Ham really needs going forward is, with great respect to the current owners, they need like a big Middle Eastern billionaire to come in there and pump a lot of money into that club, and it could become like a Chelsea, you know. So there's big things could happen at West Ham, but it's a very popular club. So, but Leeds United, I mean, a great result for them with Manchester City as well. You know, we spoke before the season on the show, and we said that Leeds United would be something we have to watch them this year. Obviously got a good coach. And Aston Villa, but you know, Neil, I wonder how much it's got to do with no fans in the stadiums. These mad results we are seeing. You know, I don't know what your opinion on that is.
Well, I think that it psychologically does something for the players to not have that. You know, if you're a team that's generally not used to doing well, you don't really have that kind of fan support a lot of the time anyway, especially when you're away. Then, you know, the bigger teams always have the most fans and have people shouting and there's songs going on. And I think that some of the big teams are taking a knock. But also, over and above that, I think the Leeds, the first Leeds game against Liverpool kind of set the tone for the smaller players to say, look, you can go in there. You can go in there and you can attack these big teams and come out with a good result.
Yeah, I agree with Hlohlo. They actually said it on their Premier Today show after the first match. I said, I wonder if now sides who normally spend 90 minutes trying to not concede to Salah and to Mane will say, stuff it, let's give it a go. And the same goes for Manchester City, because sides now are taking them on, whether it be, you know, I think the fear factor might have even been Gabriel who said to me, but certainly a Manchester United fan said to me that the fear factor of Old Trafford, Gabriel, is gone. And it's been gone for some time. And it's now true of not only Manchester United, but a lot of those clubs. I mean, you might as well go there and be on the front foot and attack.
I want to talk a little bit to you, Barney. Sorry, Barney. I want to talk to you a little bit about Spurs, because they showed some gumption this weekend.
Well, I mean, I bet you Neil was running Spurs down in the beginning of the season. He was ready to leave them. And he was saying all horrible things about them on social media.
He always does, though, to be fair.
He does,
That's
you're right.
true.
But I must say that there's one reason I think Spurs are now going to win the league. And you guys might all laugh at me, but I'll give you two words: Gareth Bale. And if he gets fit, which I know he is getting fit, and gets, you know, when he was there, Spurs were a great side, let's be honest. That's when they were at their best. Now they got Mourinho there. They're scoring 6 at Man United. They got a good squad. And I also listened to Harry Redknapp the other night, and Harry was saying that Spurs, he also thought Spurs could come in the top 2 because they have got depth in every position now, Mr. Andrews. And he ran across the whole squad. There's a lot of depth. There's goal scorers, and Gareth Bale add that X factor and watch Spurs this season. Stranger things than
Did
that.
he even report for duty at the right stadium?
Yeah,
He
I think he
play
went to
golf.
Wentworth. I agree with you. Look, I have to say that Barney is spot on, and Flo will know this. I was very guilty after the first week. But of course, that result has been put into perspective, Gabriel, because Spurs were beaten at home by Everton, who have now won 4 out of 4. So as the weeks have gone on, all of a sudden, I mean, it's not great to lose at home, obviously, but they only lost 1-0, and Everton have showed themselves to be quick out of the blocks. So perhaps that result isn't as bad as it looked initially.
And I'd say as well, Everton, I think, is a team that's also kind of being overlooked at the moment. The way they're playing isn't something to just scoff at and say, you know what, this is beginner's luck, or Ancelotti has something done in the beginning and they're going to tire out or whatnot, because they also have quite a strong depth as well. And if you look back to just 4 or 5 years ago, this is how Leicester City started. And they ended up winning the league, and they took advantage of the fact that some of the bigger teams also weren't playing at their best. So I think that Everton now is also as good a time as any for them to really give it a go and not just try to finish top 4, but maybe go for the league. And like you said, it wasn't such a bad result for Spurs in hindsight against Everton, especially considering the fact that it was the first game of the season. So anything can happen. I mean, Spurs can beat Man United at Old Trafford 6-1. To be fair, with the fans there, that scoreline wouldn't have happened, which also just goes to speak to the influence of the fans. But if that can happen, and if Aston Villa can do what they did, then who's to say that Everton can't go all the way this season?
Correct.
Well, speaking about going all the way, that after the international break, Liverpool-Everton is that's the next fixture.
So that's going to make Merseyside derby.
It's going to make the Everton-Liverpool game probably more interesting than it's been for a very, very long time, because Everton will back themselves.
Very exciting.
Everton will really back themselves in that game.
Absolutely. And I think if we look at the table right now, I mean, it's quite surprising. We've got Everton at the top, followed by Aston Villa, Leicester, then Arsenal, then Liverpool, then Tottenham. So that's the top 6.
Sure.
We're only 6.
Yeah.
What is up is down.
Listen, I just think Everton have got one problem. Let's see if you can guess who it is. It's Pickford.
That is.
Hey, Neil.
Yeah?
The goalkeeper.
Yes.
The England one.
That's the one.
Yes. Not for long. But I actually see that they're actually trying to bring some guy in.
A lot of teams have got goalkeeping problems, Neil, because I tell you, Liverpool have got a major problem there with their guy.
Oh, don't even start. Oh.
Can I just say that Liverpool's problem is not just the goalkeeper. It's more.
Yes, I know, but it didn't help, did it?
Didn't help, no.
Didn't help.
No.
I want to ask Liam a question now. And it is Fantasy League related, because I spotted the first week, as I'm sure we all did. Trent Alexander is great going forward. He's not so good defensively, and he's now not producing the attacking football and points. Doesn't he look overpriced? I mean, all of those Liverpool defenders, Robinson as well, they all look they're a bit costly.
Yeah, we will absolutely say that, especially after the last game. But even before that game, I suppose, I mean, he didn't really set the world on fire like he did last season or even the season before. So, yeah, you're probably right. But it would still be a brave person to sort of go against him now. Because if you've got him, I'll still, give it a few weeks and see how that goes. I mean, I need to alter, or I need to make some changes in my backline anyway. So I need to go there first before I go to him. So that's going to be saving grace in terms of our squad for the next few weeks.
Well, you will all remember, Marcel, we got exposed early because the very first game week, we captained him. Do you remember? It was a disaster.
But I suppose this is now also what I'm learning in this new world of fantasy leagues. It's like you can also only pick players on reputation for so long. And at some point you have to say, hey, these last few weeks haven't been good for you. And I suppose Trent Alexander-Arnold, he gets picked because he's a defender who scores and attacks. And at what point do you then start going conservative and picking a defender for defending, you know? So that's all part and parcel of the strategy, I suppose.
And that was the trend generally with Liverpool, is that you had a lot of really strong defenders who are also strong attackers as well. And something has shifted in that dynamic.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I will say this. I mean, I've never really thought of Robertson and Trent as, the best defenders, but certainly they add a lot of value going forward. But I think last weekend also showed that if the guys in central defense, aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, it can come down crumbling very, very quickly. And, kudos to Aston Villa. I mean, they capitalized fantastically
They did so well
on that high line.
They were beautiful. They were actually a pleasure to watch.
I want to ask Gabriel his opinion on Wolves. They've surprised me in so much as they've huffed and puffed and also got a few problems, maybe not in their goalkeeper department. He's probably one of the more reliable ones, Patricio. But Wolves, to me, I don't know. They got smashed 4-0 by West Ham, and then they huffed and puffed to beat Fulham at home, only 1-0. I thought there would be a big response from them. Have they got problems? Because they've lost a couple of players. Jota obviously has gone to Liverpool. Doherty's gone to Spurs. Are there problems at Wolves? I mean, where do you see their future?
I think perhaps it might also be a case of they did lose some fairly important players, so it's more about the fact of getting the other players used to playing in that squad. Like bringing in Nelson Semedo from Barcelona is very good, but it's going to take him some time to adapt to the Premier League. They brought in a midfielder, I think Fabio Silva, something like that, and we know playing in midfield is extremely difficult, so it's just going to take, I think, some time for them to adapt. We know the manager is very good as well. He's quite the tactician, and perhaps also the short break that they had, because they were also playing, if I'm not mistaken, in Europe for a little while, so their break also wasn't as long as maybe some of the other teams. So I think also the fact that some of their players aren't all going to be playing for Portugal this international break, because let's be honest, Wolves is Portugal FC, but let's see how it goes. I think the break will do them good as well, and I do think they'll come back stronger. In terms of fantasy assets, I think maybe hold off on them for a week or two, just to see them transition back into the strong side we expected from last season.
I don't hear anyone talking about. Sorry, Marcy, I'll let you go in just now. I don't see anyone talking about the elephant in the room. Can we please talk about Man City? Because what's happening?
So like, they look like they got problems at the back, Klopp. I think they got problems at the back there big time. Yeah, they also struggling in the empty stadiums as well. You can see they're not the same Man City. Yeah, they got problems. I don't know what Neil thinks, but they got problems there at the back particularly.
I think the empty stadium is the key for them. I think that they should make sure that when Walker and Mendy are there, they should empty the stadium of Walker and Mendy. I mean, I've always said that Walker was the worst asset that Spurs ever had. When they sold him, I was the happiest man. Yes. They sold him for 15 million.
So was I.
I mean, he is quick going forward, but his final ball in my opinion is not good enough. And defensively, Liam, I mean, how bad is he? I mean,
no, he does go walkabout. I mean, he wanders off in areas. I mean, sometimes he's quite effective. I mean, he's got that confrontational style about him. But in defense, I mean, if you obviously look at him just as a pure defender, he's often caught out of position.
All I think when I see Walker is that I saw him on a British TV show, like one of those Jake Whitehall shows. And all I remember is him doing the running man. So every time I see him play, I think of him doing the running man, and he did that far better than he's been playing lately. So,
oh dear, it's a fascinating season. My sister, who is actually on this group as well, and is doing okay. It's also she's having her first dip ever at Fantasy League, and she says that if she doesn't improve, she's going to drop out, which is interesting. But. So we're all hoping she does okay, but not too well. But anyway, the point I wanted to say is she said last week that the results are no surprise based on the fact that this 2020 has been the worst year ever. So we all know that. I mean, why would we expect the Premier League to behave when the whole world's in turmoil?
Exactly.
I think for me is as a Liverpool fan, everybody kept saying, "Oh, we're due a bad day at the office. We're due a bad day at the office." I really didn't think a 7-2 kind of bad day though.
It may be a bit early also to condemn 2020 like that. I mean, you may find in the last couple of months, especially the last month, that Santa does come down somebody's chimney.
I have a question for you guys though.
Very optimistic.
In terms of fantasy league, how much attention do you pay to the form of players in the internationals that they playing? Or do you just pay attention to who gets injured and that kind of thing? Because selecting the teams ahead of the next round of Premier League is certainly going to be very interesting on the back of these last results and then the international performance and then the big games coming up in the Premier League.
That is such an intelligent question. I think the only one equipped to answer is Gabriel.
Gabriel.
Gabriel, that.
I actually had a comment, but then.
Oh, okay.
Carry on, Gabriel.
I wouldn't pay too much mind to it. I think it's important to note the way the teams play. So, for example, Pogba in France is going to shine so much more than Pogba in Man United. So whether he shines in France, it's not to say that he'll shine in Man United. Whereas somebody like Bruno Fernandes, in a Portugal side, he's also got he plays in a good Portugal side. But at Manchester United, he's also the linchpin to the attack. So if he's playing well and he's got momentum going for Portugal, then at Man United, then he's an asset to look at. So it depends on the team, of course, that's playing, and it depends on who you are in the team. Salah, for example, would be a good example. If he does well for Egypt, then you can look at him to continue that momentum in Liverpool, because Liverpool's an even better side than what Egypt is, if I'm to make that sort of assumption. But like I mentioned, Pogba, that's a good example of somebody that you shouldn't really look at. So it depends. It really does depend.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gabriel. I actually do look at, what happens. I don't look in great depth, but I do look at, how they play and have a look, because I find it kind of sets the tone for the whole season. And if you look, for example, at how Mourinho, his trend and his history has been in terms of the sides that he's captained, he's always tried to keep players who have a lot of international duty out of his side. So, for example, players that played CONCACAF, he would never put in his main side because they would come back tired. So I think it's also important to look at those dynamics, because when you put your team together, you don't want to put players on who are either going to be too tired to actually give it their all in their game, or players who are going to come back with some form of niggle or injury.
Well, that's a good point. I mean,
Or COVID-19.
Barney will know that, part of Sir Alex Ferguson's success, you could argue, was that he didn't have many African players, because he knew every 2 years they'd go off to the African Cup of Nations. Which wasn't great for African players, but I suppose Sir Alex was just preoccupied with winning trophies. I want to ask a question for all of us, really. Who's going to get fired first? Because I'm looking at Gabriel's manager, and I know it's unthinkable, but if he doesn't quickly turn it around,
he's not going anywhere. He's whether some Man United's fan are happy or not about it.
That's what we want to hear. Ole's going nowhere. Double your bets, Barney.
Gabriel, I can't believe. Do you rate him?
Look, whether I rate him or not aside, right? I think that the board knows that they're on thin ice in terms of the fans. And if they were to fire Ole before they address all the other problems that's happening in the background at Manchester United, then everyone's just going to turn on the club and it's going to be such a big mess. So they've sort of put themselves in a lose-lose situation. Unless they leave or unless somebody else comes in and some change happens. But because of that specifically, I don't think he's going anywhere. Maybe if they don't make Champions League, then they'll say, look, this is the reason why he can't do anything about it. And the fans will still turn on them because they'll say they're not going to make Champions League because you don't want to buy the players that he wanted to get, like Jadon Sancho, like Jack Grealish, and yeah, it's a mess. But I don't think he's going anywhere. In my
It's bad
opinion.
that I feel sorry for him because he looks like he's aged. Like
He
he's
does
always
look like he's aged,
those boyish looks, but he's aged visibly
Yeah.
in the last few months.
Yeah, it's like
Very-
baby face is not baby face
Yeah.
anymore.
No.
So,
Yeah.
So who gets
Interesting.
fired first then?
I think Pep should go. Honestly, not that I think.
I was
he
going to
should
say, when your
fire,
question, does
but
that
I
relate
think
only
he
to
should
guys
go.
who get fired
Say
or
that
guys who
again?
just quit? No, your question is that just related to guys who get fired or guys who just walk out, because Pep is probably more likely just to walk out.
Well, he's
yeah.
due for a walkout. Hey, I think like he's even got those nervous twitches going on as he does his interviews.
I think Scott Parker's probably going to go first of Fulham.
Yeah.
I
Fulham
think
look
he's
hopeless.
probably, he came in as a sort of like their savior in the Championship, and in the Premier League, it's showing that the team at least is just not good enough for them.
Neil, Gabriel, for me, the team that's under a bit of pressure, the manager that's going to be under a bit of pressure going forward for the first time there is Frank Lampard at Chelsea. Chelsea has now gone out and bought a lot of players, spent a lot of money. You can't go and draw 3 each at West Brom and results like that, having spent money like that. So I reckon that Frank Lampard is going to come under pressure at some stage.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose
100%,
they're
yeah.
fortunate that the whole league is concertinaed. Okay, Everton are clear at the moment. I suspect that they won't stay that clear for that long. I think they'll start dropping points, but it's not like Liverpool have won everything and Manchester City have won anything. So I think he's been a bit fortunate there. The guy I think who might be in trouble is Sheffield United's boss, Chris Wilder, sadly. I mean, he did a great job, but now, they lost their goalkeeper. They haven't really got much. I don't know. I mean, it's just so difficult to predict. But at this stage, who knows? It's.
I find it quite interesting to see how managers who were not so long ago players. A lot of them, I often think some of them get picked because, the fans, when the fans on our side, it's one of our own that gets picked to be a manager. But if you take Lampard and Ole Gunnar, and you said, okay, it was a manager that was never a player at the team and had those results, would they've gotten rid of them already?
Good question.
And is it their connection to the team and their history with the team that keeps them on a string for longer than possibly is necessary?
Yeah, it's a good question.
That's very, very true.
You know who's improved, guys? I know we've got to wrap up, but I have to give kudos because I shouldn't, I suppose, being a Spurs supporter, but I think Mikel Arteta has done a tremendous job at Arsenal. He's tightened them up defensively, and they're a little bit streaky because Aubameyang's not the most consistent, I don't think, or Lacazette, but in an open season, I think, they'll take a scalp or two.
Yeah. Big signing now, Neil. They just signed the midfielder there from Atletico Madrid. At Arsenal. Partey.
Thomas Partey.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be the first party anybody has in 2020.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, you saw that one coming.
Wow.
So
I think Liam's upset. You probably took his joke, but well.
Hey, Gabriel picks up quickly, eh?
I could see Liam. I've worked with him enough. I could see him thinking that's a real corny one. I'll let Neil take it.
You said you have a failure.
That was like one of those injudicious back passes. You haven't.
You take it. No, you take it. No, I insist.
Well, in game week 4, our leader was G United FC with 92 points. I don't know how they did it. A gentleman named Gareth Arjnan. I have tried to contact Gareth, and unfortunately, we have not been able to get hold of him. However, that being said, we've got an international break, so next week we might get him on the line, hopefully, and try and chat to him. And
you said that guy Stephen Croft was talking to you as well. He's done quite well, isn't he?
No, it was Graham who's been chatty on Twitter. Nonetheless, the team that came second was Lionel Long. So we will try and get him if we cannot get hold of Gareth. And then the team that came third was our very own Gabriel, who put up his individual team, and they got 70 something points, 80 something points, 81. What was it, Gabriel?
81 points. Yeah, it was 81
I'm
points.
assuming you didn't have too many United defenders.
No, I don't have any United defenders. That's a recipe for disaster, you know. I mean, but I did have Trent, so that's probably what you'd expect from the United defenders as well. He only gave me -1 points.
To make you all feel better, you know, our team, Stars Aligned, had been, I think we were sitting in 10th. We also made a fatal mistake. We actually used, not our wild card, but we used our free hits. And we took out Son and Kane. Can you believe it?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, Spurs fans, and we used a free hit to take out, because they said Son had a hamstring.
Yeah.
Yes, apparently a lot of people took him out of their fantasy league teams, and then
He was
like,
actually the #1 transfer out, according to the statistics.
They said he had a 25% chance of playing or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But Harry Kane too.
To fantasy league fans.
But
I'm
thank God
surprised
for
that
the
Harry
free
Kane
hit
also
that we
isn't
used.
there.
You know, only a free hit. I think a lot of us are going to be using our wild cards though in game week 5. But I'm quite looking forward to seeing what everyone does.
Yeah. Anyway, well, we hope that Barney and OG do move up the table. I think he was a bit disconsolate when he said to me, "Where are we?" earlier on. But the truth of the matter is we're only 4 weeks in, and we know that there are going to be a lot of twists and turns. And you just need one game week to shoot all the way up. And equally, you need one game week to go backwards. In fact, we haven't seen
Sky.
No, well, Sky, we haven't seen Gregory. We haven't seen Gregory, our son, since he's top of the log after the first week. I mean, he's not far. He's in the next room, but I don't think he'll be on this show for the rest of the season.
But anyway, guys, just a reminder that you can still enter your Fantasy Premier League team on our Premier Fantasies logs. I see that there are other teams coming in, so we should have a bigger log. We're hoping to get to 100 very, very soon. We're sitting at 97 at the moment. But in the meantime, if there is more content that you guys would like to see, don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. And we look forward to seeing all of you guys again next week, same time, same place.
Bye.
Thank you.
We
Cheers.
didn't even thank our panel.
Oh, thank our panel. Thank you very much to Barney, to Klopp Klopp, and to Gabriel, and all those others that didn't join us tonight. Bye-bye, everyone.
Cheers all.
Right.
Yes, bye.